Angel, Senator McDaniel, Senator McGarvey, Senator Nemus,
Present.
Senator Schroeder, Senator Southworth, Senator Storm, Senator Thayer, Senator Wheeler, Representative Bentley, Representative Bray, Representative Brown, Representative Dixon, Representative Donahue,
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Fleming, Representative Frazier Gordon, Representative Herron, Representative Huff, Representative Imes,
Here.
Representative Johnson, Representative Koenig, Representative Lockett,
Here.
Representative Marzian, Representative Miller,
Present.
Representative Reed,
Here.
Representative Roberts,
Here.
Representative Thomas,
Present.
Representative Meredith,
Yes, ma'am.
Senator Mills.
I'm here. Okay. Looks like we have a quorum and we're constituted to do our work today. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from October 25th. I have a motion from Representative Lockett. Is there a second? Have a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Okay. We have before us, if you have perused your agenda and packet, we have two administrative regulations that have been referred to us, one for the Volunteer Fire Department Loan Fund and one related to Kentucky Building Codes. And we have both of those folks here today. If there are any questions on either of those administrative regulations, are there any? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to the main portion of our meeting, which are the good folks from Kentucky Association of Counties, and they are going to present their legislative agenda for the upcoming session. So we have folks in front of us that are very familiar to the committee, but I'll go ahead and ask them to introduce themselves, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman Mills. Jim Henderson, the Executive Director at the Kentucky Association of Counties.
My name is David Livingston. I'm Scott County Magistrate. I am President of the Magistrates Commissioners Association and President-elect of Kentucky Association of Counties.
Shelley Hampton, Director of Government Affairs, Kentucky Association of Counties.
Very good. We are glad to have you here at our final meeting of the year, and we'll allow you as much time as you need.
Well, thank you, and again, good morning. Thank you, Chairman Mills, Chairman Meredith, for the opportunity to be here today. You've heard who's here, mostly folks you know. We really do appreciate the opportunity to appear today. Our plan is to be brief and respectful of your time. I might note we've given you our priorities packet, which is something like we've done in the past. That's a lot more for a resource if you want to dig back and look at things later. But the focus today, I think you'll find the slide presentation is really the roadmap for our discussion today. And our focus is primarily to be educational and informative. We have found that it's really important for us to continue telling the county story. We realize it's a very short session. It should be reserved for priority issues. And I think you find that our testimony is really in keeping with that approach. I do want to start with a couple of words that are often underused. And I know in my previous life as a county official, I rarely heard these words, thank you. I think it's really important to say thank you when people do things for you, when people respond to your requests. And the legislature has been very good to counties in recent years. I want to say on behalf of our counties, thank you. In my nearly 25 years in county government, I can honestly say that I haven't seen a time, unlike the last few years, where legislators were more engaged with us and more generous, quite frankly. I've been in this role as executive director now for about 3 years, and I've seen more investment in counties in these last few years than I've seen in the prior years. And investment in financial ways, of course, it's easy to identify those things. Things like our jail funding that we hadn't seen increased in decades. Investment in infrastructure, broadband, water, those are important things. Investment in our sheriff's offices and the court security reimbursement. Investment in our county elections and county clerks. And all those are incredibly important. But maybe as important to those of us who come over here and advocate on behalf of counties, your investment of time, your willingness to hear us, to spend time talking about the issues with us, to have an open door, to have a lot of dialogue. I think Chairman Meredith has certainly spent a lot of time with us over the last few years in really exhaustive conversations. And Chairman Mills, you've reached out trying to learn more about counties in a way that is refreshing and helps us understand that the legislature is very interested in counties. So on behalf of the counties across Kentucky and on behalf of KACO, I just want to say thank you. An unconditional thank you. Not a thank you, but let us go through a list of things we want. A sincere thank you for hearing us out and for being quite responsive. I'm going to turn it over to KACO's first Vice President, David Livingston, Scott County Magistrate, and he's going to talk a little bit about who we are and what we do. So,
All right. Thank you all again for allowing us to come and sit in front of you. And I think what's really important is as we move past this meeting, your last one of the year, and then as we move into session, is as Jim said, we keep telling our story and why we make requests that we do and want to spend some of your time. Our new president, Amy Milliken, a Warren County attorney, had a scheduling conflict that was unavoidable, so she sends her regrets. So you all get me today. Congratulations. As Jim said, today is more informational. We recognize short sessions are designed for limited, targeted work by the legislature, and that we are focused, counties are focused on the long game. It's important for us to keep you engaged and for us to stay engaged for the long term, not just be short-sighted. So we continue to tell our county story. We can't expect you to understand our issues if we haven't explained what our jobs are as counties and what we do. So first, what I'd like to do is tell you an explanation of how we get to our policy positions. We're an association of 120 counties. We have 1,500 members in our association. We have magistrates, judge executives, sheriffs, jailers, county attorneys, county clerks, circuit clerks, PVAs, coroners, and Commonwealth's attorneys. Our direction comes directly from our members, which is a grassroots effort. Politics, you can't get any more local on the level of counties. Regional listening sessions, conferences, member feedback, all those are taken into account to inform our team and our board on what we would like to focus on. Our 35-member board of directors is led by a 5-member executive committee and approves the KACO platform of priorities and focus. Ultimately, at the end of the day, when those things are approved, we ask our advocacy team to execute. So that would be Jim and Shelley, Gracie, and others that we work along with during the sessions. Very simply, we are a member-led, board-guided, team-executed association. Again, a member-led, which would be your constituents from across the state, board-guided, who are elected to serve on the KACO board, and team-executed approach. Telling the county stories, what do counties do? Counties are a political subdivision of the state. Actually, the Commonwealth of Kentucky was first a county of Virginia before becoming the 15th state. Counties are the political subdivisions where constitutional and statutory mandates are implemented. It's because of this coexistence with the state that counties are partners with you in so many issues. The county government is the singular government unit responsible for providing the countywide services every citizen expects and is entitled to. If you expect a jail for incarceration of arrestees and criminals awaiting trial, that's what we do. That's what counties do. If you need a safe, secure place for all your legal documents, records, deeds, liens, tax records, that's what counties do. If you as a citizen hope for a complete and fair and honest and accurate elections, that's what our counties do. When unusual deaths in a community, the obligation of all death investigations, notification of unknown descendants, the responsibility to order autopsies, that's what counties do. If you want the most current countywide database of property ownerships, assessments of all real and personal property, so every taxing district can set their tax rates and get it right, which would include states, schools, fire districts, health departments, and various others, that's what we do as counties. If you expect fair access to the judicial system, a modern court facility where courtroom judges require adequate security and bailiff protection, where jurors and witnesses are safe, that's what counties do. If you expect the collection of all property taxes for all jurisdictions and an accurate count and distribution for these taxes, that's what counties do. If you expect when you dial 911, someone will answer and be qualified and trained to dispatch the right responder. That's what counties do. If you're a business filing suit to collect a bad check or need to have a criminal summons served or someone be arrested, or if you're a parent seeking back child support or expect any other order of the court warrant, transportation to court, whether it's from local jail or halfway across the state, that's what we do as counties. I hope you're seeing the picture here. All these services and many more, most of which are required either by Constitution or state statute, are what counties are held responsible for. And when I say that's what counties do, that also includes you all, because you all are county residents. So I don't want to gloss over the fact that you as state representatives and senators are a part of this, because you go back home to your home counties. As we continue the conversation over this session, interim discussions, and in the sessions to come, we'll keep telling you our story to assist you and others to better understand the roles and responsibilities of our counties. We are your partners. Your counties are your partners. As I said at the beginning, we're the government that is most closely related to the state. County officials are elected countywide, elected by the same voters that elect each member of the General Assembly. Our shared constituents understand that their county government is the government closest to them, but our interrelationship with our state representatives and senators is how they often express their expectations of the next local government. So what they rely on us to do as county officials is to work with you directly to help make our counties better. We look forward to ongoing dialogue and are appreciative of the continued partnership with each of you. So now I'm going to pass it off to Shelley to talk about some specific areas of focus in the upcoming session.
Thank you, David. Good morning. As David said, we are partners with the state, and one of the most important partnerships with you all is transportation safety. The network of roads in Kentucky, as we all know, is a web of federal, state, and county or municipally maintained roads. Out of the 80,000 miles of roads in Kentucky, counties are responsible for 40,000. We are responsible for half of the roads that people drive on in this state every day. And we maintain a third of every bridge, a third of all bridges in our state. The only major state road fund revenue stream that counties receive is from the motor fuels tax. As you know, that tax is split between the state. They get 51.8% of that. Counties get 18.3% of it, and cities get 7.7% of that. So while counties are responsible for half of the roads, they get 18.3% of that revenue stream from the road fund. While we have long advocated for an increase in the one state revenue stream out of the several that make up that road fund, we're setting our sights forward. Your actions that help bring the 4 battery plants to Hardin County will make this state a leader in the electric vehicle battery market, as many manufacturers have already or are making plans to increase the number of the electric vehicles they pledge to make, while slowly scaling back the number of gasoline-powered automobiles in the future. Last session, in House Bill 8, you set the wheels in motion to capture electric vehicle fees to help pay for the upkeep of the Kentucky roads that they use, like those who have always paid their share at the pump. As you can see in the slide, let me move that for you. As you can see in the slide, the electric and hybrid vehicle fees beginning in January of 2024 will be deposited 50-50 into the state road fund and the state general fund. The charging station tax is separate. That's the 3 cents per kilowatt hour, and that's been assigned to go 100% to the state road fund. However, nothing in House Bill 8 allows for revenue sharing of this EV fee. Vehicles that are largely touted to be a significant part of our driving future and displacing gasoline as the fuel of the driving public. It was shared in testimony yesterday that Americans bought 67% more electric cars in the third quarter of 2022 than in the same period in 2021, according to the Electrified Light Vehicle Sales Report. In light of these facts, we respectfully request passage of legislation that will specify that revenues generated by the electric vehicle fees be shared with counties in the same manner as the motor fuels tax is today. As all of us experience increased costs in our home budgets, that is also the case for county budgets. Certainly, all facets of road maintenance have increased. The cost of merely operating a motor vehicle alone has gone up over 40% in the last year, and federal funding received through the CARES Act and the ARPA Act is largely restricted. Those ARPA funds will sunset in 2026. That leaves counties back where they've been for the last several decades with three ways to raise revenue: property tax, insurance premium tax, and occupational tax. If we were to tear it all down and recreate the local tax structure, I don't think most of us would have it look quite as it does today. Times have changed, and your ability to improve local taxing options to include more competitive choices should change with it. So I'll turn it over to Jim now and let him talk about some of the challenges our current revenue options that are available to counties that face.
Thanks, Shelley. And as she mentioned, the current revenue streams, as you see, that'll be the next slide there, but you all got that in front of you. You can see the huge reliance that counties have right now, and the same is true for cities, on occupational license tax. That's our number one revenue source. This is a great place to jump into the area that this committee's heard a lot of testimony about. And again, I mentioned earlier the amount of time we spent with Chairman Meredith over the last 3 years. I've testified many times about the need for us to do whatever it takes. And again, I'll leave that to folks a lot smarter than me. And in this case, it takes a constitutional amendment. But to be able to move counties into having more opportunity at the local level for sales tax. And as you all know, we've testified about this before, 38 other states allow for some type of county sales tax authority. And even before Chairman Meredith was even in the General Assembly, many of us in county government have been talking about this option for a long time. I remember my good friend, and you've heard it testified here, my neighbor Judge Mike Buchanan talked about this even before I was sworn in to my first term. Talked to some of the area county judges about if we could only have that as an option for counties, that would make us number 39 among the counties. So this continues to be an area of primary focus for CAECO and for counties. We think it's consistent with the work of the legislature and the tax policy discussions that you all have had about moving towards more of a consumption tax. And I shared 3 years ago, after one of our conferences, and the polling that we saw among our own members was that there is widespread support among county officials for general tax policy that moves closer to consumption-based taxing and less to income-based taxing. Generically, that's the position of our members as well. And so, again, we'd love to be a part of that equation, and the only way we do that, again, as you know, because we've testified about this over and over, is a constitutional amendment. I want to thank Chairman Meredith again for being a champion and leading this discussion, and we'll continue to put focus on that area. Even so, this kind of fits into a broader discussion that we're talking about as counties, which is an area that we've called in this particular session or in this particular time, leveling the playing field. Because I think it's important, as David said earlier, just to be educational and informative. I think that we take for granted sometimes that people understand the complex taxing options that counties have. And truthfully, even some of our own members don't always fully understand the disparities between counties. This is an ongoing discussion that we, again, are considering primarily educational and informative at this stage, but my members, the county leaders that I work for, really expect this discussion to not be overlooked, even as we talk about new ways for counties to thrive. And let me be clear, any current inequities between counties on what type of taxes they can collect and which ones are available to some counties and not to others, this isn't something that this legislature created. In fact, these are laws that are primarily 40, 50, 60 years old that were passed in a very different time when maybe only a handful of counties were even considered large counties. Now, some of those counties that were large are actually on the other end of the population spectrum, unfortunately. So really, it's a hodgepodge and a piecemeal over a few decades. It's really resulted in a wide range of discrepancies among counties with some arbitrary population thresholds. 30,000 is the number here now. Actually, at one time, that was 50,000. And in these counties, the tax burdens for counties that are not allowed to collect certain taxes inside the corporate areas continues to shift those tax burdens to the unincorporated areas, disproportionately taxing rural areas to pay for those mandated services that David mentioned, services that benefit everyone in the county. And I thought it was kind of interesting as I was thinking about today. There's really no better example of this in just picking the 5 counties that are represented by our executive committee, because they're just randomly elected members from across our state. And if you look at the 5 counties there, I just call it a tale of 5 counties because it just shows the variety of existing opportunities and options for counties across the state. David from Scott County, population now of 60,000-ish. We're using the numbers that are a little old, sorry. Fastest growing counties in the state. They're allowed to collect occupational tax inside the city of Georgetown. They were grandfathered in about 20 years ago when there was a danger of them crossing that threshold. But they can't change the rate. They risk the loss of that status they now have. Madison County, a county that's been a pretty large population county for several decades, but they're not allowed to collect the occupational tax in the corporate areas. And they're capped at the rate that they can have. Warren County, the number 2 in growth and expected in the next 30 years to be the largest county in Kentucky in raw population, second, not counting Jefferson and Fayette. They'll have over 200,000 people in the next 30 years by projections. But they're also limited on collecting certain taxes inside city of Bowling Green, which is booming, but booming because the community is growing out into the areas of the county. And of course, that area is annexed into the city, as you would expect. Boyle County, our past president, he's rolling off this week. They recently actually, because they saw this potential to cross the 30,000 threshold, went ahead and took proactive measures and raised the occupational tax because they knew if they didn't then, that once they crossed that threshold, they would be limited on what they could do, and almost did that as a safeguard, not so much because it was an immediate need. And then finally, I think Harlan County is a great example of kind of the reversal. Interestingly, Judge Mosley, who serves on our executive committee, shared with me that Harlan County was once one of the largest counties in the state. And I think either Benham or Lynch, Senator Wheeler, you're from that part of the world, was one time maybe the largest city in Kentucky, maybe next to Louisville and Lexington, when the coal boom was so big. So again, you see the changes over the landscape of the state. And when you see that, I just think it's interesting, again, to understand that there are varying degrees of tax availability for counties, and it sometimes makes it much more challenging in some counties than others. Again, at this stage, I would consider this mostly educational and informative. And you might ask, well, why bring it up now? Why are we talking about this when we're talking about trying to move to a different model going forward? Quite frankly, our members are still facing real challenges with revenue today, and even without the conversation about the future, they talk about these issues quite frequently with us, and it's my job to advocate on their behalf, as you would expect. And also, we're getting ready to go through a transition, much like the legislature. We just come through an election, and many of our members are going to be new. Some of them are going to realize after they get sworn in that they have some limits on their ability to tax in their counties that they didn't even know that they had. And so this, again, is for us very much educational, very much about telling the county story and making sure that when we are over here talking about our issues, that you have some background for why some of these things pop up from time to time and some of the natural tension that this creates between us and our friends in the city sometimes. So I'll use this opportunity to shift, kind of wrap up, because I think the election slide is something that you all are all interested in, as are we. It's been amazing to watch over the last 4 or 5 election cycles, the real shift in the county elected officials across the state, and particularly the turnover that we see with each election cycle. I know that many members of the General Assembly haven't been in the General Assembly more than a few terms. You should know this is very true among our membership. And as you can see in this slide here, this is the election results from just this past election. And we had about 62% of our incumbent judge executives that were reelected, but you can see we have 45 new county judges out of 120 that are coming on board. Looking at that magistrates number, 41% of our fiscal court members, magistrates and commissioners, is new. And so, again, you can see the numbers. I won't read them all to you, but I think it's really interesting to see, and again, for people like Shelley and myself, who've been around this world for 25 years or so. Some of you maybe a little longer than that. We just take for granted that our folks understand these issues. I can remember personally, it was about term 2 before I began to really even understand some of the own challenges, things that I could or couldn't do as county judge. And so we expect that to be a pretty steep learning curve for them as well. But again, I'd like to wrap it up where we started with saying thank you. Thank you for giving us an ear. Thank you for hearing us. Thank you for being very courteous and open to hear us when we don't always talk about things that are pleasant or maybe things that you prefer that we not talk about or things that we just totally disagree about. You've always been very friendly and open to hear from us. So we appreciate the partnership, look forward to the ongoing dialogue, and I think we'll stop here and turn it back over to you, Chairman Mills, and honor our commitment to be brief.
Very good. Well, I appreciate the briefness. We do have a couple of questions in the queue. First is Co-Chair Meredith.
Thank you all, and thank you for being here today. Happy birthday, Shelley.
She did not want us to let anybody know that.
Want to ask a real quick question. You mentioned the grandfathered counties, Jim, and I am not 100% sure how many of those there are. I know of 2 because you mentioned Scott today, and I know Boone County was grandfathered prior as well. Do we know the other counties that fall into that equation?
I can't recall them all off the top of my head, but I do remember I was actually county judge that year. It was after that 2000 census. That was really the census year where we saw, I don't know, maybe 6, 8, 10 that were, yeah, Shelley remembers. She was working on the Judge Association then. So, but we could definitely get that. And some of those pre-exist some of the actual statutes. So I think Boone County actually might be one of those that was just a long ago had it, long before even some of the statutes. So
We'll get that for you. I know Scott, Nelson, and Knox were 3 of them. Marshall was another, but we'll get the other 2. There were definitely those 6. Boone was a little bit of a different animal because of the timing of theirs.
Thank you.
Senator Thayer has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. It's good to see my constituent, David Livingston. Congratulations on your leadership role in CAECO.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming today. Jim, if you might, could you go back to the slide that showed all the new members elected? Very well, thank you. I know that just like there was in the legislature, there was a red wave at the county level, and I was wondering if you could give us some more detail into the partisan breakdown of these offices.
I can, and interestingly, if anybody's interested in in even more detail, we got a really great data team back at the office that does a lot of analysis, and we've got a full spread on our website that drills down county by county with a lot of different demographic evaluations that I think people might find interesting. I brought just the cover sheet of that article for reference if asked. It looks like that among the county judges and magistrates, we saw a pretty large population or a large political shift. We saw that 4 years ago as well, but now after this election cycle, 93 Republican judges, 25 Democrat judges, 2 other. Among magistrates and commissioners, 436, 130, and 2. Among sheriffs, 88, 32. Jailers, 84, 33. County clerks, 79, 41. And then the list goes down. I mean, but to your point, Leader Thayer, I mean, the political reality is that the landscape of the county officials reflects the way that the state's voting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you say that number again on the number of Republican judge executives?
93.
93. That's amazing. When I first got involved in Kentucky politics in the mid-90s, I think there were about 30-some Republican judge executives. I see Karen Kelly here. They were mostly, and I see soon-to-be Judge Sarah Beth Gregory, they were mostly concentrated in the old 5th District with the occasional rogue in different parts of the state. So that's an amazing number, and I do appreciate you sharing it with us. '93. I never thought I'd see. Well, actually, I did kind of think I'd see it someday, and I'm kind of glad I did. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Senator Wheeler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim, I guess one question I had, I know that, one of the elements of tension that I've seen in my own home county between the city and the county is sometimes they'll go along the utility lines to annex a portion of property that may be marked for development that may or may not even have anybody living in it. I think that, in fact, I know some folks that they literally annexed right up to their back porch to bring it into the city of Pikeville. And I think I was told of an episode in Laurel County at a Kentucky conference that I guess they built their jail kind of out in the middle of nowhere, thinking that it would be part of the county tax base, and they went down one road, took a left, then went down another one along the utility lines and annexed about 100 feet of jail. Is that a particular problem that you see in some of these counties over 30,000 as far as undermining the county tax base?
Unfortunately, Senator Wheeler, because of those laws I mentioned, it creates that conflict or tension that would otherwise not exist if the counties weren't really having to surrender any tax revenues in those areas. I mean, I use my own county as a good example. My mayor and I used to joke. It didn't matter to me how much they annexed in our county because it didn't cost the county government anything in our county because we were under 20,000. Even a growing county as we were, our population was still low. And so there was no really adverse effect to the county government with annexation because there was just no loss for the county. But in those counties over 30,000, it creates, a tension that's really unfortunate because counties aren't opposed to city growth. I mean, city's growth is good for counties. I mean, there's nobody growing in a city that's not growing in a county. We're all inside a county. And so it's that loss of revenue that creates that problem, Senator Wheeler, which I think explains those instances you described, which sometimes are I guess, problematic at best, if not questionable, as to whether or not that's an appropriate way to do annexation. But as it currently stands, the only people who have standing in an annexation issue are residents. So anyone who's adversely affected by loss of revenue would not be able to even oppose that kind of annexation.
In a second question, if I may be permitted, Mr. Chairman. Sure. I know something that I've heard from a lot of constituents in one of my counties lately is that, when folks are arrested, whether it be for stealing, some self-harms like drug abuse, a lot of times they're right back out on the street within 24 hours. And, they'll get picked up again. It's just like a revolving door. And the county jail has, roughly 400 beds, but, there's maybe 40 that are actually reserved for county prisoners, those being pretty well the worst of the worst. And the rest of them are essentially state and federal prisoners because it's a budgetary measure to keep the county jail from being a major revenue loser for the county. Is there some reform mechanisms that I think I did file a bill? I think Representative Meredith filed one too, to try to mitigate some of those costs. But what kind of solutions would you propose to deal with that ongoing problem?
Well, certainly the bills that both you and Chairman Meredith filed last session were incredibly important. Again, even though they did not pass, they brought to light, and we had some great conversation in a couple of different committee hearings that I think was enlightening to members who simply don't know. And listen, before I was county judge, I didn't know about some of these complexities with how counties are really the only place by which many of these state inmates are housed and how they're given credit for the time that they serve against the state sentence, against the time they serve. So again, just bring that conversation to light was really important last session. Those kind of things, and they have a big price tag. I think that's something that I think you all saw. Obviously, that's a price tag that we're now bearing as counties, because that's the actual cost to housing those folks pre-adjudication. But when they're given credit toward their state sentence, we asked, and it is a part of our list of priorities that we'll continue to talk about, having some credit financially to counties for the time that they're given credit toward a state offense, because they would have otherwise been in a state facility and being paid, or a county being paid per day for that cost. And again, the per diem increase last year was huge for us, and absolutely created some cushion there so that conversation can continue. But county jails are no doubt the number one budget issue for almost every county.
If I may, I can give you a great example with Scott County. We have an 84 bed jail in Scott County that's been there for 30 years. And you know the growth that we've experienced. We have two options. Right now, we still can't staff it well enough. And I don't think it matters how much you pay for jail staff. It's going to be difficult to staff because that is a tremendously emotionally taxing job for an individual to perform. So we have two options. We can build a $40 million jail for future growth, whereas we would have to bring in federal and state inmates to help pay for that. And at that situation, you're growing staff, which we're having issues with now on the local level, or we partner with someone else that has a jail larger that may have vacant beds that we can partner with on a long-term basis. And so those are the two things we're looking at right now in Scott County. What do we do? Is it financially responsible to spend $40 million on a new jail and increase your cost of employees and everything else in jail operations by $2 million a year? That's not even including your debt. So we're wrestling with that right now in one of the fastest growing counties in the state. And that's something that our judge, Joe Pat Covington, has taken on since he came in. And so that's an example for you to look at. And I would encourage you, if you have questions about that, reach out to Judge Covington and ask him what we're doing to try to address the issues.
And I would just follow up on that, and we've talked about this just a little bit, Jim, but the per diem increase was really great for counties who have their jails and are operating those jails. And I don't remember the disparity between the price tag of the $2 per diem increase and the bill proposed by myself and Senator Wheeler, but that would have been a more broad-based, across-the-board shot in the arm to every county in the state, frankly, probably, than the $2 per diem increase, because of so many of our counties housing inmates in other facilities and other communities. I think we've got 74 roughly jails.
Full service
Jails in the state right now. So you've got almost half of the counties in the state who are housing in another county that didn't benefit at all from the per diem increase, but would have benefited from the credit for time served issue. And so I think that's something we can look at in the future, maybe going forward, is how those two things play to each other. Because I think the other thing that the $2 increase created was it raised the fees that those other counties were paying to house their inmates in other counties, because they're getting a better deal from the state now, and with that comes the pressure to increase on those local contracts as well.
If I might respond, I just want to be clear. It's actually $4, and Chairman McDaniel, thank you very much for the $4 per diem. You're right, Chairman Meredith. I mean, it does create some other issues, but clearly per diem increases have been something that counties have asked for a long, long time. And so, but it's a comprehensive approach. I mean, I really think, again, you all have done a great job of putting a light on the complexity of this jail issue. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. For counties that have jails, the per diem was huge. But for counties that don't have jails, other things would be important. You're exactly right.
Senator Thayer has the follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Alvarado and I were just discussing these numbers with these county elected offices, and I would just like to make the point that it's impossible to gerrymander a county. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Southworth.
Thank you. I had a question, but I was going to maybe chime in on a couple of other items on my way there. One relating to this operational efficiency title you have here that says supporting the repeal of the arbitrary 80,000 population. And I want to just point out, while the number might be arbitrary, it's not arbitrary to say that large counties don't pay attention to local newspapers and small counties do. So I send out the same thing on my email list that I put in my local papers, and I get just as much feedback from people that saw it in the paper as I do on the emails. And I think it's two different populations. Other people that live in more urban areas like, Louisville. I've got some in Louisville now. Where do I put it in the local paper? I mean, they're just going to get on the website. So I think whether the number 80 is not the right number or not is the issue, not whether small and big is different. What I really wanted to ask about was the disaster preparedness idea about having, I guess you're saying or suggesting automatically having statewide jurisdiction for sheriffs. I'm trying to get to the bottom of why we need that as an automatic and whether it can't just be done like normal where you have reciprocity on request.
Great question. That question actually, or that priority is something the Kentucky sheriffs have asked for. Again, sheriffs are part of who we are, and sometimes their issues that they're going to lead on. Our role is pretty much to support that, but not necessarily take the lead on it. Kentucky sheriffs have asked for that because the last two disasters, I think, really put a light on the fact that in a situation that might even be not maybe as much an emergency, that might be a declared emergency, sometimes law enforcement officials go into other jurisdictions to help, and having that kind of jurisdiction for sheriffs was important to them, or having that kind of authority that crossed jurisdictions. I know that Chairman Meredith there at home in Bowling Green after the tornado, those of us who were in that area kind of seeing what was going on, maybe helping and doing things, you saw law enforcement agencies from all across the state who were there. And as we understand it from the sheriffs, there are now things that have to be done to have allowed them to really have the full authority that they might need to actually say, no, you can't go there. You can't go down this road, that automatically doesn't happen today. And so I think that's where they're asking for, is in those cases that if they were called in or had to go to another jurisdiction, that they would have statewide jurisdiction as an elected or an appointed deputy sheriff. There are other things in the disaster preparedness arena that I think we would like to be a part of some conversations about that might just make it easier for counties to react in a disaster, but those aren't specifically spelled out in our priority list. On the threshold for publications, I do want to be clear about that. We would prefer there be no population threshold at all. I mean, counties have advocated for being able to get away from having to put so much in the newspaper that we're required to notice, because it is so expensive. And again, whether we like it or not, it is reality that there's just not a lot of, there are not nearly as many people who rely on print media for their sources. And so we've argued to kind of help get away from having to do that, because it's really expensive in some cases to print the tax bills, the delinquent taxes and all that in the paper. So the 80,000 was actually a compromise. We would have much rather seen there be the same rule apply to everybody, but it actually only applies right now to counties over 80,000, which would only affect maybe 10 counties.
And if I may, Senator Southworth, your question about the sheriffs, it's not just about tornadoes and flooding. If you recall, when we had the tragic event in Floyd County with the local sheriff's department, there were folks that responded, deputies and other agencies that responded from across the state to help fill the roles in those communities as they were dealing with that tragedy.
So I guess my follow-up on that is, if other people came from all over the state into Floyd County, did Floyd County have a declared emergency, or did Floyd County have MOAs or whatever with these groups for reciprocity? Because everyone knows in an emergency situation, the last thing you want is every Tom, Dick, and Harry showing up on a scene somewhere, not organized by the head cheese, not put in their proper chain of command, and just start calling out orders. So I'm having a hard time figuring out how that is a good way to go.
I should not say from across the state, from the region that responded from other counties, that Sheriff Hunt from Floyd County has those personal relationships that folks could come in and fill roles if necessary. Now, I don't know what their policing authority was at that point in time. That's a different conversation that, we could talk about this all day, but it is a scenario where it would allow, if that incident happened again, and hopefully it never happens again, he would be able to make that request to have them be able to come into the county. They would report directly to him as if they work with him, and be able to have those things in place with regards to standards and professionalism.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. I thought that's how we had it now, but we can look at the details. Thanks.
Senator Nemeth has.
I think what the sheriffs want, they already have. You can ask another sheriff to come into your county and work with you. But it was such cumbersome way they have to do it that they couldn't just come in. So what they're asking is not to be able to have jurisdiction throughout the state whenever they want it, just to go to your county and that county and be able to arrest people. What they're wanting is for it to be easier for not just the sheriff or the judge exec to be able to call them. It could be a deputy or whatever and say, we need help. Can you come help us? And when they get that request, they come in with full authority. Instead of what it is now, there's limited authority. They have to go through the hoops, and it takes a while for them they're there before they have authority. So I think that's mostly what they want is clarification and be able to do it easier and quicker when help is asked for.
You've articulated it much better than we did, Senator Nemeth.
Our final question is Representative Thomas.
Thank y'all for being here. Shelley, can you flip back to that slide, the revenue sources, the occupational property, right there. So over the last few years, the military has really been pushing for compacts between states for occupational licensing fees and things. Are you noticing that fee is still standing pretty steady or so? Because the compacts would allow our service members and anyone holding like a speech pathologist license or so to be able to hold their license in Tennessee but be able to practice in Kentucky. Is that fee or anything, or that revenue source, is it still holding steady? I just don't want one to hurt the other.
Well, on the occupational license tax, that is holding steady. If there are interstate compacts, those are usually worked out between the two states. Those don't usually go to the local level. So
okay, so it doesn't affect it too much or anything then.
Not that I'm aware of. Am I missing anything?
Yeah, I don't think there's really I'm not aware of a particular carve out or exemption. We would really need to drill down. I think probably, honestly, your area is probably one of the few areas that would have a border base that this could be an issue. So I really can't speak, but we could find out a little bit more about that, Representative Thomas.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Well, thank y'all so much for being here and taking our questions. I'd just maybe suggest a one-pager on this leveling the playing field for the committee and have some KRS references and things for folks that want to dig down in it and learn a little bit more, because I think it's very pertinent issue. So look forward to seeing y'all during the session, and thank you so much for your testimony today.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
We have one final thing on our agenda that we, as co-chairs, would like to go through, and I'm going to yield to co-chair Meredith to kick us off.
Thank you, Co-Chair Mills, and it is coming to the end of the interim for this committee and most of the committees of the General Assembly, and as such, we want to honor our members who will not be returning this time. We have a few that are not here today, and I do want to say a little something about them. But I will speak to each one of these members and their service, and when we're completed, if the ones that are here would join me for a photo and to present you with a resolution, I would appreciate that opportunity very much. I will start with the two on the House side who are not here today, and those are Representative Huff and Representative Marzian. Representative Huff, many of you all know very well, came here to be with us after a tragic situation. Her husband was elected with me in 2010, took office in 2011, and died of a tragic incident in his home district soon after that. And she took over his role, has served honorably over the last 11 years, and we want to wish her the best in her retirement from this body as she moves forward with her life. Also, Representative Mary Lou Marzian, who has been one of the longest serving members of the body, who will not be returning with us. We want to honor her service. She and I have probably disagreed more times than we've agreed, but we've had a very respectful relationship over the years, and I have enjoyed her time serving both on this committee and in the House with her and getting to know her a bit. And so we wish her the best in her retirement after many, many years of service to this institution. She'd been back on this committee for a couple of years, but I think had served previously many years ago as well. And so we wish her the very best also. Next, I want to take the opportunity to honor our friend Representative Donahue, who represents the 37th District from Bullitt and Jefferson County. He's been serving in the General Assembly since 2013 and has served as a valuable member of this committee since 2019. And Representative Donahue, we want to thank you for your service. We look forward to see what you'll do back home in Jefferson County as you continue with your advocacy efforts and other things that you wish to pursue in the future. Also want to recognize Representative Jerry Miller, who former Jefferson County or Louisville Metro Council member, came to us in 2015 in the General Assembly and has served on this committee since 2017. We thank you for your service. We wish you the best in your, I think, retirement and with your grandkids as you go forward, and hope that you'll come back and visit us when you can, Representative Miller. And finally, I wanted to leave this one to last, Representative Koenig. Adam has served the General Assembly since 2007 and has served on this committee since his first days in the General Assembly, and has served this committee extremely well, representing Boone and Kenton County. I'd take a moment of personal privilege to say that not only has he served this committee and the General Assembly well, he has been one of my dearest friends, my closest confidants, and there's not been a single piece of legislation that I've probably ever worked on that didn't have his eyes on it before we put it before a committee or put it through the process, because of the tremendous level of respect that I have for his work and the knowledge that he has for both the work of this committee and other committees that we have served on together. And so I want to wish him the best on his future endeavors, but we will certainly stay in touch, and again, just wish all of you the best as you move forward with your lives and your service. It has been a pleasure to serve with each and every one of you. So if you all would come forward, I think our photographers here, I would like to present you all.
Hey, Chris. Chris. Hey, Chris. Chris, hang on a second. We got one for Will. No. We'll. Hey, I would have shaven if I knew you wanted a picture. All right, on the Senate side, we have two members that are not returning, and I'll start with the one that is not here today. It is a congressman-elect. Maybe he has other business before him, but Morgan McGarvey. And Morgan has been a member of the General Assembly for 10 years. Morgan's moving on to Washington. We're proud of him in his current endeavors. So thank you, Senator McGarvey. And finally, Senator Will Schroeder. Senator Will Schroeder is moving on, moving out of the legislature life right now, and he represents Brayton, Campbell, Kenton, and Pendleton counties. He's been in the General Assembly since 2015, and most notably, he was the former chairman of this committee. So I thank Will for all of his advice that he's given me over the years, and want to thank him for his service. So I'll pass this certificate on to him. Thank you, Will. Thanks, buddy. All righty. With that, Senator Thayer has a comment.
Thanks. We got a chance to say our goodbyes on the floor to Senator Schroeder, but I want to say in this committee how much I'm going to miss him, one of my closest friends in the legislature, and I'm sure we will continue that after December 31st. So I wish you well, my friend. When he first ran for this office, he was married with no kids, and he's still happily married with 3 kids under the age of 6. So I think we know why he's retiring from the legislature, at least for now. But I also want to, Mr. Chairman, to say something about my friend Adam Koenig. Representative Koenig and I met in 1998. I was the 4th District Republican chairman, and he was a long shot candidate for the Republican nomination for county commissioner. We met at the Bob Evans in Fort Mitchell, Crescent Springs. It doesn't exist anymore. That's right. It's But every time I drive by that place, I think about that meeting, Representative Koenig, and our long friendship and your great service to this Commonwealth. By the way, he won that primary, and went on to be elected county commissioner. That was a Republican wave year as well, Jim Henderson, and I'm going to miss him. Hopefully one of these times when I ask him to go to the races with me, he won't be playing golf. It seems like every time I ask him to go to the races, he's playing golf. So we'll see at Turfway this winter, Adam. I'm going to miss you. Thanks for your service.
Well, thank you to all the retiring members and the members that are returning for next session. This is our last committee meeting, so if there are not any objections, we stand adjourned.